Welcome to episode 23 of the Talking Friars podcast. I'm your host, Ben Fadden, here with Jacob Zimmermann. Jacob, you doing all right here?
Yeah, doing good, doing good.
All right, so Padres just finished up. Offense didn't show up in the first two games in Queens. They show up late in the game, in the third game, in the series finale. That 6-run inning, capped off by the Tatis grand slam, the Machado home run. It felt good to get one game out of these three. We'll get kind of to our takeaways in a little bit. But first off, let's just start off with game one of this series here. Obviously, this happened on Friday. It was Jacob deGrom Day, obviously. We knew that the Padres, they didn't have a great chance of winning this game. Going in, I said in my pregame thoughts that Blake Snell, this was a perfect opportunity for him because no one expected him to win this game. There was no expectations going in because you're facing the best pitcher on the planet.
Yep.
And I think he pitched pretty well. Obviously, the story, though, is Jacob deGrom. He was dominant, goes six strong innings. He drives in 2 runs. He allowed 1 hit, which was a ground ball to second, but because of the shift, that let Myers get that ball got through. Padres offense, they did score those 2 runs off Miguel Castro on the Cronenworth homer. But, through those 80 pitches that deGrom had, there wasn't much life in the Padres offense. And that was expected. So what did you think of deGrom? His ERA is now 0.56. Just stuff that we just haven't ever seen before.
That's video game numbers.
Definitely. We saw it from the start of this game. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that you could see it, that he was locked in. And they were kind of saying on the broadcast that I think Tony and Don were saying that this might have been his day to throw, a no-hitter or a perfect game. It's kind of weird that a pitcher like deGrom doesn't have one, but that's just he usually gives up a home run or, 1 hit and then settles down. And that was pretty much that. That was the same case on Friday where that ball kind of rolled through and deGrom kind of was frustrated with that. It was like, man, he kind of didn't want the shift there because he could tell that things were rolling for him. He obviously ends up winning this game. Those 2 runs were huge because, if we talk about Blake Snell's performance, he was good through 3 innings. He gets out of the bases loaded jam in the 4th, but then he gives up those 2 doubles. He balked with the runner on first, which was absolutely huge, ended up being huge because, Jacob deGrom would come up, or he was up, but later in that at bat, he would drive in 2 runs there. And if the balk didn't happen, a runner would be at first and only 1 run would have scored. Maybe Snell gets out of it, or Tingler brings in someone else and they get out of it. And we're looking at a game that goes to extras tied at 2 or something if Cronenworth still hits that 2-run home run. But that obviously changed the game there. It was just a mental error. Did you I had that feeling, at least for me, when Snell balked, you could kind of tell, oh, well, this probably isn't going to end well.
It's kind of like that one thing where, it's something that, there's a mistake that happens that where, into the future, you can kind of tell that, it's just going to keep happening because it's just a simple mistake as a balk. And then you got the pitcher up, Jacob deGrom. He's a good hitter, obviously, as we've seen this year. But it never feels good to give up a 2-run single to a pitcher, like ever. You kind of foresaw that coming, especially as San Diego fans. You always think the worst, kind of. I hate to say that, but, you always feel like the worst is going to happen, especially after a simple balk. I feel like it felt like it was going to happen.
Yeah, and the Padres had chances after that, but that those 2 runs obviously pretty much killed them because the offense didn't show up. Obviously against deGrom, which was expected, and then Cronenworth was pretty much the only offense after the Tatis double that really did anything. Obviously, like I said, that they were supposed to lose this game, so you can't be too bummed about it, but at the same time, the Padres offense hasn't been great as of late, and that continued on Friday night. Like I mentioned, they had those two chances down 3-2 in the eighth, 2 outs, Mateo on second, Pham flew out to right, and then Hosmer pinch hit. That was one thing. He did not play. He didn't start the game on Friday, even after the day off Thursday. But he just needed to get his legs underneath him. He pinch hit with a runner on first, and the ball was inches, maybe feet away from coming fair with Machado on first.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think that probably could have tied the game because Machado knows when to hustle, and that was obviously one of those that where you need to hustle. And if that ball's a few feet to the left, that ball's fair. I'm pretty sure Machado was on his horses, obviously, once that he made contact and the ball was going into the outfield because obviously I think Pilar was in right. He wasn't going to catch it.
No.
But and then Hosmer ends up popping up to end the game. So not much went right for the Padres, obviously, in that game. They dropped to 37-28. Snell was coming off those 7 shutout innings against the Mets. The last start, he pitched well, obviously, those first 3 innings. And then, like he said in the presser after the game, he just really couldn't locate.
Yeah. You want to add on to that. Sometimes you got to admit your fault. All of a sudden you feel like you're going dominant, right? And he was, 3 innings. Through 3 innings, he was dominant. He was keeping up with Jacob deGrom. He wasn't no hitting him, but it was pretty darn close to it, But you have those little mistakes where you can't locate or you can't find your spots. And good thing for Blake Snell is that he can admit it. He's not making up excuses or lying to the fans. He's saying I messed up there, and he looked good. He was keeping up with that fastball, and I like that he was able to do that.
Yeah, and just to speak to Jacob deGrom's greatness, I saw after the game, he's now driven in more runs this year than he's allowed.
That's insane.
Absolutely, I don't think I've ever seen that. I mean, it's one thing to do that. Let's say a pitcher drives in a run on opening day and then he shuts another team out. Okay, then maybe. But to be in June and you have a .56 ERA now and you've driven in more runs than you've given up. I mean, you've given up 4 runs all year. We've seen many starts this year where Paddock's given up that in 1 inning or Snell's given up that in 1 start. But to just do that, I mean, just think how fortunate the Mets are to have someone like that. DeGrom left this game, right flexor tendonitis, which is in his finger, a little nerve there. But he ended up throwing on Saturday before the game, so Mets fans obviously are happy about that. But just a great game all around from DeGrom, from the Mets. And that was a game that the Mets deserved to win, frankly, because Snell kind of faltered after those first 3 innings. And then the offense obviously just didn't really show up past the Cronenworth homer that barely got over the fence. So drop that one. Game 2 wasn't a whole lot different. They combined for 3 runs in the first 2 games of this series. Mets win this one 4-2. Grisham was activated, which was a surprise to me. I think that was a big storyline. He was activated.
Caught all of us off guard.
Yeah, he was in El Paso. What do you have, 2 rehab games, and then now all of a sudden he's back. He didn't start Sunday, so fans were like, okay, why did he even come up then? But let's face it, we'd rather have Grisham in there than Jorge Mateo.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Or Jurickson Profar, who he was playing center field like he'd never played the position before.
That wall in him, man. They don't like each other.
Yeah. But Grisham activated. He hit second behind Tommy Pham, who's going to be in the leadoff spot until he starts sucking again, which I'm not even sure that will happen because of how good he's been. I'll get to that in game 3. Lindor had the homer in the first off Musgrove. Musgrove, man, he was not great in that first inning. His command was spotty. He had a long at bat, I believe, the first at bat of the game to Jonathan Villar, and then it hit him, and then it went downhill from there in that inning. Lindor, obviously, with the 2-run homer to the 7 line out in right center, the Mets fan group. Villar had a solo homer in the 8th, made it 4-1. Tatis did hit his 18th homer of the year, which I believe tied him for the most homers in the National League with Acuna. That made it 3-1. That's all they could get in this game, though. This offense, you could speak to this too, Jacob. This offense, obviously, Marcus Stroman on the mound. That might, I think, John Schaefer tweeted this at Extra 1360. He was kind of asked a question like, is it the pitching the Padres are facing that's the problem, or the offense? And I said the pitching, but at the same time, that's still concerning because this is the same pitching that they're going to be facing in a wild card game. You're going to face DeGrom probably, or someone like that, or in a playoff series, it's going to be a DeGrom, Stroman, another all-star type pitcher, and then them all over again because of the days off in between in the series. And teams don't want to go to their fourth or fifth starter because if they don't have to. So these are the type of pitchers the Padres are going to have to face. And if they're not producing now, I'm sorry, but I just don't see them producing in the postseason when it matters.
Yeah, this is a team that's in the same division as the Dodgers and the Giants. They got great pitching in that division. Trevor Bauer. You think of Kevin Gausman, who's doing great this year. Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw. The list goes on. It's insane. If they struggle against a guy like Marcus Stroman, who's a good pitcher. Don't get me wrong, but if they can't hit against him, it makes you think, down the line when we see them again, because there's a good chance we see them again in the postseason, if we don't win the division, that can we hit off it? Can we hit off them in the postseason? Or is that going to be different? Is something going to click in our minds or something? We're going to hit off of them. We're going to see their stuff better. It just makes you think as a fan, and kind of worry almost that can we produce runs against these good teams that have good pitching? Because we've done that in the past.
Yeah.
We've done that in the past. Tatis is, as people say, Tatis is Bauer's dad. That's like a joke going around on Twitter. They've produced off, guys like Bauer. They've hit off guys like Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler this year. But that's just one team. You got to be able to do against like guys like Marcus Stroman right here. I get maybe Jacob DeGrom. That's a struggle. No one can hit off him. That's insane. But you got to be able to hit off guys like Marcus Stroman. Only one run, I believe, and they didn't. Well, yeah, only one earned run on Marcus Stroman through 6 1/3. That's not going to get it done.
Yeah, and Marcus was good. He did give up 6 hits. That was the problem. As I was scoring this game, I'm looking, at every half inning, and I see, they're hitting. They're putting together hits in every inning. Pham had a single in the first, which really wasn't a single, but he still got on base. Myers singled in the second. Pham singled again in the third. In the fourth, Machado singled. But here's the point: like they weren't stringing together. They're not stringing together these hits. It's
that's the problem.
If you have one hit in every inning, it better be a home run, or else you're not going to be scoring runs. And that's exactly what happened on Saturday against Stroman. He pitched well. I'm not trying to say that he didn't, but he only took 85 pitches to go through 6 1/3. So I think it's a lot of trying to be aggressive, which I understand when the Padres offense is slumping like that. It's they talked about it on the broadcast Sunday with Tony, and he's like, yeah, well, when you're slumping, that's kind of one of the things that you get into is you just want to hit yourself out of it. So you be more aggressive at the plate than you probably should be. And I feel like that's what's been happening, especially with Hosmer, maybe a little bit with Myers. He did strike out looking Sunday. But I think just being a little too aggressive and, grounding out on the first pitch or grounding out to second like 2 or 3 times in a game, I think like Hosmer's been doing. And so I just think overly aggressive can hurt you. And I feel like that happened on Saturday. And then on Friday, like against DeGrom, they couldn't really do anything. It's like, if you be aggressive, he's just going to keep pumping 102 mile an hour fastballs at you, and you're not going to hit it, or you're just going to be defenseless, and then you're going to have nothing with 2 strikes. But on Saturday, that was the big key, I think, at least in Stroman. I think he probably recognized that they were being really aggressive, and he used that against the Padres offense.
Yeah, they weren't having those major league at-bats that we saw Jerks and Profar have on Sunday, that huge at-bat. They weren't having those major league at-bats where they're working the count. They're swinging at pitches they shouldn't swing at, where they should just take it. Maybe you get a better pitch down the line, but the worst thing comes to worst, you get the pitch count up. You get a better major league at-bat. You work the count. You don't want to swing at pitches that are low or they're working it and they're hitting their spots. You don't want to swing at those pitches, if it's the first strike you see, um, because that's just going to lead to a ground ball and it's just going to kill the momentum of this team. And that's especially what Hosmer's doing. He's grounding out a lot. Um, and, he had a hot start to the year, but he's cooled off a lot. And hopefully he can pick that up. But it all starts with the approach. The major league at bat. That's just the big philosophy.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. You mentioned Hosmer. Yeah, he got off to a really good start, Mr. Clutch, and I feel like he still is. I mean, he was
Yeah.
a couple feet away from Friday night from returning to that name and tying the game up there. But I think it's funny that fans, especially on Twitter, they want to, they bagged on Pham and now they're shut up. They shut up pretty fast. Didn't hear anything when he hit a homer on Sunday.
They did the same thing with Tatis too. In the beginning of the year, they're like, "Why did we sign him to this huge deal
Well,
if
I
he's
didn't see
sucking
that.
like this?"
That's one of the
Oh,
problems.
I've seen that.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I saw fans, like, oh, it's early, don't worry. And then for Pham, they just absolutely poop on the guy. But
Yeah,
for like Hosmer, he was great at the beginning of the year. Then seems like he's grounding out to second every time, just like it's 2019 again. And now fans want to, get all on him. And it's like, okay, do you not recognize what this guy is? He's won a World Series. He's won an All-Star Game MVP. I'm pretty sure he's going to get out of it, and your guys are going to be pretty quiet
Oh yeah.
pretty shortly. I mean, they have an easier schedule coming up. If he doesn't get out of it by then I might be worried. But like now, they're facing DeGrom, Stroman, everyone's struggling. So
Yeah.
I think they should be pinning it on the entire offense, not just Hosmer. But as for Saturday, the pitching, Musgrove to Hill to Johnson. Musgrove finished, 6 1/3, 3 earned runs. He really settled down after
He
that
did.
first inning. Felt like that slider was probably the best it's been in a very, very long time. After that first inning, he strikes out 2 in the second, strikes out 2 in the third, 3 up, 3 down in the third. He strikes out the side in the fourth, 3 up, 3 down there. In the fifth, he gets 3 up, 3 down. And so he just really settled in there. And if that's the guy that they get back, kind of how he was pitching in the first 4 starts of the year, I think Jace Tingler and Larry Rothschild are going to be pretty dang happy.
Yeah, as I saw on the Talking Friars Twitter, he had low pitch counts and innings. He had 8 pitch innings, I believe. And he had a couple of those where he was just dominating. He really settled in. He did struggle in the beginning, but he has a 2.5 ERA, and he's 4-6. That I get. He gave up 3 runs, right? But our offense is more than capable of putting up more than 3 runs. If we are, we're able to settle in, it hit off a guy like Marcus Stroman, who's good, but it just brings you back. I think we're better. I think we're better than Marcus Stroman is a pitcher. I think that our lineup, if when they're hot, when they're able to see the ball better, when they're able to have those major league at bats, the approach. It's I want to reiterate that so much. We should be able to get this guy Musgrove. When he starts settling in, it should feed off to the rest of the team. And I felt like it just didn't do that on Saturday.
Yeah, Padres fell to 37-29 with that loss. At that point, I was watching the Bally Sports post-game show, and it was kind of startling. You knew the Padres offense was struggling, as of late, the last, couple of weeks. But Tatis he hit the homer. He went 31 at-bats between hitting his 17th and 18th homers, his longest of the season. That homer, obviously, in the 7th inning, tied him for the most with Acuna, but 31 at-bats, it's a pretty long time, at least for Tatis, who's right up there in the NL MVP race with DeGrom, which that's another discussion. But even because he's so good, I don't think that he should be even able to win the MVP. That's what the Cy Young's for. But after this game, the Padres offense had a 190 batting average with a 3-9 record in the last 12 games since, I believe, May 31st. So that just shows it's not just Hosmer, it's not just Myers who are kind of getting the brunt of it. It's pretty much the whole team. No one wants to get on Manny, but no one wants to get on Tatis, but they struggle too. Everyone has struggled this year, especially during this stretch. So, they showed before the pregame today, as we're recording this Sunday after the game, they showed that the Padres, first four hitters, their batting average was like near 200. So it's everyone that's struggling, not just one or two guys. But hopefully, like as we can move on to here on Sunday, the Padres having that big inning in the seventh inning, 6 runs, maybe that can kind of start getting them going. Obviously, they have a really easy, it seems like, series with the Rockies coming up. Then they get a full house with the Padres against the Reds coming up coming weekend. And then the Dodgers, so this is a perfect time to get ready because you don't want to go get swept by the Dodgers at home with a full house, or else, Dodger fans are going to start chanting, they're going to start opening their mouth. Even though the Padres have won that season series, right? They're winning it right now. But as for Sunday's game, Padres, obviously, like we mentioned, 3-9, their last 12. They needed a big win, and they got it. It didn't look great. They had a 1-0 lead with the Fam had the leadoff homer off Lucchesi, but then Tomas Nido hit a 2-run homer off Paddock, who pitched well, which we'll get to. Made it 2-1 in the fifth. Padres offense, again, it was just pretty silent. Now, you're expecting it to be silent when Trent Grisham isn't playing after one game. Jake Cronenworth has a day off. Webster Rivas is catching, who's their fourth string catcher going into the year. Jorge Mateo's playing center, not Grisham. So, past Pham, Tatis, Machado, Myers, Hosmer, it was Ha-Sung Kim, not known for his hitting. Webster Rivas, obviously, he's making his big league debut in his rookie season at over 30 years old. Mateo is definitely not known for anything but his speed, really, and maybe his glove a little, and then obviously the pitcher spot. So it's kind of hard to expect a lot of runs to be scored when the last half of your lineup is that bad offensively, and they didn't. But it was when Jace Tingler made the move to say, you know what, Grisham, you know what, Cronenworth, yeah, I gave you the day off the first 6 innings, and now I'm going to put you in because this is a huge spot. We're only down by 1 run. We got runners in scoring position. This is where we need you. And they came up really big in that inning. Hosmer, starts it off in the 7th with the walk. Cronenworth singled. Rivas, great sack bunt. That's
That
not
was
going to get
amazing,
really
yeah.
noticed. But second and third, Grisham, struck out. That was just a good, really just fooled Grisham, I think, on the fastball there. Blew it past him. But then Profar, probably the at-bat of the game. Yeah, Tatis hit the grand slam. Manning hit the homer. But Profar was the one that was down 0-2, and he worked the walk, which put the bases loaded. And Tatis wouldn't have gotten up had Profar not walked, had Pham not walked to bring in a run. And then obviously Tatis hits the grand slam, Machado hits the homer. So absolutely huge at bat. People want to get on Profar because obviously he's not a great hitter right now, like a lot of the offense. But what he does do is he puts together a great at bat, and that's exactly what he did. Kind of like Tommy Pham and Jake Cronenworth for that matter. So what did you see from Profar there? And then that Tatis grand slam, it definitely got a lot of more energy back into the team. And I can only see that being a great jumping off point going into this week.
Yeah, I heard Tony Gwynn Jr. say in the broadcast, he said if the Padres end up winning, we're gonna look back at that Jurickson Profar at bat, and I think we are. We're doing that. It was an amazing at bat. Worked a walk. There was a lot of pitches that I thought he was gonna go fishing after, but he stayed patient. Worked the count amazing, and then Tommy Pham 4-pitch walk. And then it's your superstar Fernando Tatis. Third grand slam of his career, and he's only played he just a little bit over a full season. That's insane. And then Manny Machado following it up back to back. That really solidified the game. But it all started with that Jurickson Profar at bat, which I can't say how important that was in this win.
Quick trivia: you say he's hit 3 career grand slams. Can you name them?
I know he had one in Texas.
There you go.
Against the Rangers. I can't think of the other one. The other one was this year, right?
Yep. Yep.
Oh man. Yeah, I can't name that one.
It was the it was the weekend that the swag chain debuted. He hit 2 home runs in that game on that Sunday game against Seattle, I believe. Um,
Oh,
that grand slam. It was late in the game. He hit it dead center field.
that's right. And Kyle Lewis didn't even look back, did he?
No,
That's what it was.
I
Okay.
was there and he was just standing there and looking up. He was just
Yeah,
looking
I
up at
remember
the
that. Yeah.
ball. Yeah. So and then the third one obviously against the Mets on Sunday. Machado with the homer. That ball was like at his shins. So
Yeah,
that
I
just
don't
shows
know
how
how he got that.
powerful he
He
got to
was
that
just
one.
sticking the bat out,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
letting it go. It was just put the barrel on the bat, let it go. He has that much power. It's crazy.
yeah. As for the pitching, Chris Paddock was he's gonna be like I tweeted on the Talking Fire's Twitter during the game. His line didn't look great because the Padres were losing 2-1 at the point, I believe, when he left. But he ends up going 6 innings, 9 strikeouts. He didn't walk anyone, gives up just 2 runs on a Tomas Nido 2-run homer, which he missed the spot by a couple inches. I mean,
Yeah.
if it was a little up more out of the zone, like it was to Alonso when he struck him out twice. Shut up, Mets fans. But then I think he would have struck out as well. But so it was a great outing. And what I noticed, going to those Alonso ones, he struck him out in the first, struck him out in the fourth. Alonso did single, but that was because Paddock missed his spot by a mile.
Yeah.
Um, 70 hopper through the middle.
It
Um,
was a
but
weak one too. Yeah.
but you know, what I noticed from Paddock, at least against those two Alonso at bat, it was pretty much his whole start. But he was obviously aggressive with the fastball, and not just aggressive with the pitch, but aggressive with the pitch and the location. Up in the
Mhm.
zone, he had Alonso 0-2 before he struck him out fastball up in the first. In the fourth, he had him 1-2, and then he struck him out swinging fastball up. And I tweeted this too. The whole building, anyone that knows baseball at least and has watched these two guys go at it these last few years, you knew exactly what pitch was coming. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think that anyone sitting in Citi Field thought, oh, watch out for Paddock's curveball. No, you knew exactly that the fastball was coming, and Pete Alonso just kept swinging right through it. It's one of those things where you're at the batting. I feel like if you want to compare it to some little kid or something who's like in minors or majors in little league, and you go to a batting cage and these guys are just grooming this, it's just grooving fastballs, and it's right at your eye level, and it seems like it looks so good, and then you end up swinging and whiffing at them because it ends up at your eyes, but right out of the
Yeah.
machine it looks great. But that was pretty much how it was again with Paddock today. His fastball was great, and in that fourth inning at bat, like I mentioned, he was 1-2, started off 0-2, I believe, and he had that ball which was way up out of the zone. It was like he was trying to launch it at the screen, behind them, but way up out of the zone. But I think at the beginning of the year, if this matchup took place at the beginning of the year, and the two, I don't think I'm not sure if Paddock would have went right back to the fastball, because he wasn't as confident. I think he'll admit that he wasn't as
Yeah.
confident at the beginning of the year as he is now. And so for him to go back to that fastball and believe in himself and say, "Hey, I can locate that back up up in the zone," and he did it. And so I think that's a big benchmark for him because he got out of it in the sixth, but that Alonso at bat was huge because you could just see that he had confidence.
Oh yeah. Paddock the whole game he was executing that fastball, hitting his spots, and that's what we were really looking at. After coming back off the IL, we talk about this a lot, but executing the fastball, throwing the fastball high, high heat. He hit 98 today. That was 98. That's fast. Some closers can't even do that. I know Mark Melancon can't even do that as a closer. Um, he's an old guy. We'll give it to him. But Chris Paddock, executing that fastball, that's all we really needed out of him.
Yeah.
He didn't use the curveball as much today. I noticed. That could have, we could have seen a little bit different there. But the big thing was the fastball, and he executed it well, 100%.
Yeah. As for the bullpen this game, they go to Tim Hill, who struggled a little bit. Austin Adams took him 4 pitches to get out of that. I believe he struck out Lindor. looking,
Yeah.
who was smiling after that,
He
which
was
I
smiling
don't.
after, yeah.
I get he was looking in Manny Machado's direction, but how can you smile after you strike out looking in a big spot like that? Emilio Pagan, 16 pitches, 1 run, no earned runs because it was the Cronenworth error, a rare error when he made a diving stop and threw it past Hosmer. But Melanson looked good. This was one of those scenarios where obviously he hadn't pitched in a while. He hasn't pitched in a while because the Padres haven't been in safe situations much. But this was one of those where it's like, okay, it's a 4-run game. I don't understand why you're pitching him, but they already had used 3 of the Padres relievers. So I guess I could understand that. And like I mentioned, this was just a game, I think, for him just to, see live batters again and just get work. Because, and I think Jace Tingler would tell you this if he's asked this. This was a game that the Padres needed to win. You can't get swept by a team that's probably going to be in the postseason. It's that same thing with the Cubs series before they came to New York on that off day, Thursday. You can't lose to teams that are probably going to be in the playoffs in the same situations as you, because how are you going to expect to beat them in October when you can't beat them now? So, and especially when obviously every game's going to have an ace type pitcher on the mound, especially in the Mets case. But this was a great win. It didn't look great early on just because, the runs weren't happening. But again, half the lineup wasn't usually what it usually is. So what were your, they improved to 38-29. They're 3 games back of first. Dodgers are in front of them. Don't know what's happening in their game with Texas. They got smashed on Saturday, 12-1. Love to see that. Bauer's spin rates were down on all of his pitches. Wonder why. But what were your takeaways from this series? And this game obviously was a must win. You don't want to get swept.
No, yeah, 100%. You had to avoid the sweep. That was the big thing. I think that's why Jace Tingler decided to put in Trent Grisham and Jake Cronenworth in those huge spots. If you were just looking to give them a real rest day, you wouldn't have put them in there to avoid the sweep. So I like that from him. I like that he put in Mark Melanson. I think that a lot of people may disagree with that, but he hasn't been in a safe situation for a while because we haven't been winning in a little while.
So why did you like that then?
Because
to get him in?
to get him out there, get him throwing in a live game, not just throwing BP or throwing bullpen earlier. It was good to see him kind of in a live game. I thought, I know that closers kind of struggle sometimes when it's not a safe situation. But Mark Melanson looked great, 2 strikeouts and the 3 batters he faced. He got some calls there I saw towards the end of the game, but we'll take those any day. As for my thoughts on the whole series, it was a struggle, but it's a good. It was good that we won the last game to kind of start a little bit of momentum into the next series, especially after we got these next 2 series against teams that are kind of struggling. And then we have to go against the Dodgers, which is a huge series.
Yeah, and Padres are, we mentioned it's a great win today. Offense finally came alive there. A little bit of help, obviously, from Jurius Familia, who was like walking the entire world in that inning. But Padres are still, with that said, they're 4-9 in their last 13 games. You can't continue that, especially against the Rockies and Reds, 2 teams that aren't going to be in the playoffs. And are 2 teams, frankly, that are probably going to be selling off guys. What are we? A month and a half out from the trade deadline. So, as for, I did want to touch on this one a little bit. Joey Lucchesi, obviously former Padre, he gave up a combined 2 runs to the Padres this season in his 2 starts. It was one of those Zach Davies situations where, he was on this team. He knows the batters pretty well. But at the same time, the hitters knew them. So I don't really, I guess they could kind of cancel out, but he pitched really well. It was an identical start today as it was last Friday. He gives up 1 run, which was a homer in the first inning. On Sunday, Machado last Friday. He got through San Diego's lineup twice. Relatively low pitch count. Lucchesi had 72 pitches, at least to my scorebook. So, man, if the Mets can get that type of Lucchesi against everyone, not just the Padres, maybe he needs to have a chip on his shoulder every start out, because if he has that back of the rotation, then maybe Mets fans won't feel as bad as they do, because they don't have Carlos Carrasco and Noah Syndergaard right now. Their rehabs kind of pushed back. What do you think of Lucchesi this last week or so?
The two starts, I thought he did have a chip on his shoulder, right?
Yeah,
I knew that going in. I knew that he was going to have to, come in, and he was going to pitch like, why did you trade me? I should be here.
because you had a 4
But
ERA.
oh, he has a 5 now. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
But today I think he had a better start today than he had last time. Struck out 6, only
Yeah.
allowed 4 hits. That's when you think of Joey Lucchesi, you think of high hit counts, high earned run. And the Padres, they were struggling, but I thought that maybe this game would be the game where we could, maybe get back on track, get a little momentum from a guy who struggled this year. It did happen, but it didn't happen against the guy who I thought what was going to happen against. But Joey Lucchesi pitched great. I don't think that'll happen again, but Met fans, if that happens, take him.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
We'll take you, Darvish, Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove.
Oh yeah. Any day of the week.
Yeah. Let's see. So that's a series. Padres lose the series. They haven't won a series since late May against the Astros. Obviously, when Tatis hit the game-tying 3-run homer, Myers hit the homer in extras that series. It's kind of sucks because obviously it sucks because you want to win, but more in my opinion because it's games that going before this season on paper you were expecting to be really. I'm not saying these series weren't competitive, like they were competitive because the Padres pitching frankly pretty much stepped up in the first 2 games and today with Paddock, but the Padres went into this season being what, second best team in the league, I would think, on paper.
Yeah.
And
Behind the Dodgers.
Yeah. And to, be losing series to playoff teams, like I mentioned, or teams that are going to be fighting for playoff spots, at least the Mets, I think they'll be fighting for the NL East. No one's going to be a wild card because at least if the Giants keep it up. But, losing the series to the Mets, losing a series to the Cubs, I'm kind of blanking Mets again on last weekend. Those are playoff teams, and those are teams that you want to win series against, so you have confidence that you can beat teams like that in the future. Now, if they go and, sweep the Rockies, win the series against the Reds, and then win a series against the Dodgers, okay, maybe then they shut me up. But I think right now it's still a little worrisome that they're not winning series much against nationally probably playoff teams.
Yeah, I can vouch for that 100%. I don't think we should worry too much right now. I think maybe once we get past this Dodger series, if we don't win these next at least 2 out of these 3 series, if something bad happens in that Dodger series, then we can maybe start to worry. But I think that it's starting to get to that point, but I don't think it's there just yet. There's a thought back in my mind that's kind of like, all right, we got to start picking it up, but just give it a little more time. I think if we could beat this or win this series against the Rockies and the Reds, and then go into that Dodgers series with a little bit of momentum, a little bit of chip on our shoulder, that all right, we're hot right now. You guys got to come and stop us. If we can beat them and then beat the Dodgers, then that'll be good. But if we can't win against that Dodgers team after having a little bit of hot start, then you might need to start to worry, because that's a playoff team. That's a team that you could see in the divisional series if you end up winning that wild card. That's a very big possibility. So yeah, I don't think it's just time just to worry yet, but there is that thought back of your mind that's kind of like, all right, we got to start producing against these playoff teams.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Dodgers. If they obviously, they took 3 out of 4 in their last series at Dodger Stadium. Tatis went off, and if he didn't went off, if he didn't go off hitting 5 homers in 3 games, they probably would not have won the series. That series,
Yeah.
They obviously lost the series in San Diego at Petco, winning that one Sunday game. Hosmer coming through with the game tying single and then the go ahead single. Then Pham had the insurance runs, but Um, I don't think that, like I mentioned, I'm not worried yet. I'm just saying if they don't win the Rocky series, if they don't win the Red series, and if they lose, the Dodgers, or they don't, put up a fight like they did the first series of the year against the Dodgers at Petco, then I think we can start a little bit worrying because, again, these are teams that the Dodgers, at least in that case, they're a team that you need to be competitive with if you think you're going to win the World Series, or not even just that, get past them, because one of us, Padres and Dodgers, are going to be a wild card team, and the other is going to have the best record in the National League, and so we're going to be playing each other in the NLDS again. So you're going to have to get past. There's no doubt you're going to have to get past them, whether we're in the wild card spot, we win that game hopefully, or if we're in the division, we win the division and we're hosting those games. You're going to have to beat them regardless. So those are definitely huge games that you're going to have to win. But before we get to a little bit of a Rockies preview, and I reveal the next guest on the pod, we have a couple mailbag questions. This one is from our very own Nick Fadden. He asked, asked, who are we getting at the trade deadline? We need pitching and a bat. I'll let you go first, I guess. That's a broad question.
Yeah, there's a couple targets that I've had my eye on. Pitching. I'm not as concerned with pitching as I am, getting an outfielder that can hit. I'm looking, maybe for a guy
Myers?
like. Oh yeah, I'm thinking,
Okay, because it's not Pham right now.
No, I'm thinking, that the Padres really consider dealing Myers, because he's got that insane contract. He's kind of starting to slow down.
It's going to be, I should mention it will be easier to trade, I think, now, because there's less years on it. There's like 2 more years after this year. So it doesn't look as huge as, 4 years left on it a few years ago when he seems like he was striking out all the time. It doesn't seem as daunting, I don't think, to opposing teams. And Padres could take a little bit of the salary, like the Rockies did. Not as much, obviously, as the Rockies did with Nolan. They pretty much gave the Cardinals Nolan Arenado and gift wrapping. I mean, I personally, I don't see. You can finish your point, but I don't see the Padres, moving Myers when he's like their one guy that was here from the very beginning of the failed, bring in of trying to build a super team, with a bunch of old Craig Kimballs and Matt Kemps and someone who didn't even want to be here. But so he's been here from the very beginning. I just don't see Preller doing that.
Yeah, and I can definitely agree with that. There's a loyalty thing there, kind of where it's kind of beyond the business. And he's not terrible. He's just kind of slowing down. And you kind of get a little worried. For the future. Is he going to continue slowing down the rest of this year? Because he's had a little rough stretch of games. Maybe I'm over exaggerating that, but I have had my eye on since 2020, 2019. Joey Gallo, 100%. I know that some Padre fans kind of disagree with that because he strikes out a lot, but that's an elite defender out there. That's a guy with a ton of power. The strikeout rate is a little bit high. I'll definitely be the first to admit that. But that's my guy. I think that Padres should at least maybe consider throwing an offer for.
Joey Gallo. Let's see. Let's look at these stats.
He might be struggling a little bit this year.
But like I understand
that 2020 was insane.
2 months. I understand. I understand what you're saying. And Joey Gallo, the Rangers in that scenario, they're rebuilding. Man, I just don't understand. I don't even think they have a concrete plan of what they're doing. Like they tried to bring in Kluber and Kyle Gibson and who they have, Mike Minor, when they traded them all away. I just don't. Yeah. They don't have a big plan. But right now, let's see. Gallo's hitting 222 right now. Let's see. Ooh. 222. Yeah.
Not an average guy.
Yeah, I can tell. Let's see. He has 11 homers, 26 RBIs. But let's see. We know the one thing I would disagree, like Joey Gallo has power. Yeah, we don't have a DH, so that's a problem. And I think, to be honest, I think if the Padres were going to trade for an outfielder, it's probably going to be a backup outfielder, someone that's. But here's the thing: Profar is like the backup outfielder right now, and he's valuable because he can play everywhere. And so, you want Mateo's speed. So, are you going to acquire? Is there an outfielder out there that has Mateo's speed and can hit? I don't think there is. Ketel Marte is out there, but are the Diamondbacks really going to deal their best player when this?
Or even a guy like Chris Bryant. I know that might be a little more expensive, but
and if we trade for him, he's starting.
Oh yeah.
So
100%.
And I don't think the Cubs are in a situation where they want to take on Myers' contract when they already have a right fielder in Hayward who's making over $20 million the next 2 years.
Yeah, that's expensive.
That just doesn't. But for Gallo, I mean, I know batting average, there's shifts and all that, but 222 in 2021. You say he had a good year in 2020. He hit 181. 2019, 253, 18, 206.
That might have been there, yeah.
Man,
I didn't watch him a lot in 2020.
Let's go to slugging. No, on base. Well, let's do OPS. OPS, he has a 792 this year. That's pretty good. 679 in 20, 986. His best year was 2019, by far. 18, 810, 17, 870. So he's definitely one of those where he's one of those sexy guys, right? You look at him, he's like, oh, you got to have this guy, right? He's ginormous. He's an Aaron Judge type, player. But he's not, we're not an American League team. They already have Tommy Pham and Grisham in left and center. And to be honest, what team is going to want to take Myers' contract? Because again, like I mentioned, Joey Gallo is not going to sit on the bench, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're not paying his salary to have him come and pinch hit in a situation where he's probably just going to strike out. So I wouldn't be in on that. I understand that, we need power and all that, but I think power will come in Grisham. And once Myers gets going, he showed that he can hit homers with the best of them, especially last year. And when he's more patient, like I mentioned earlier, I think the offense is just being too aggressive right now. And when he's more patient and he's getting balls to attack in the zone, when he's going oppo, that's when he's at his game. So so I'm not as in on Joey Gallo as you are. Do you have anyone else in mind?
That was kind of a question I wasn't really prepared for, but I'd say either him or Chris Bryant, just the big names. Kind of, it's like I don't have any smaller name guys that I can name off the top of my head.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, Cedric Mullins with the Orioles. Now he's a center fielder, but I'm not sure if the Orioles, they view him and like Ryan Mountcastle and guys like that and Trey Mancini that they're going to build around. I think Mancini stays, but Cedric Mullins is a guy that maybe they let go and maybe they hope that this is a 1-year thing that he's kind of blowing out.
He's going off right now.
Yeah. Ketel Marte I mentioned, but I don't see him as a possibility. Again, he's going to have to start. And the Diamondbacks, when they're rebuilding, they're like 20 games under 500 already. We're in June. Now, I don't think they're going to take on Will Myers' contract when they're not going to be contending the next few years with the Dodgers, the Giants, who are going to be big in free agency next year, and obviously us the next few years in the NL West. So, I expect it to be a smaller name, a bench outfielder type guy if they do that, because the infield, you have Ha-Seong Kim, you pay him a bunch of money, $7 million a year. You have Profar who can fit both of those roles. You're not gonna, go with one catcher on the roster. So I just don't see really a scenario where obviously people want to upgrade, but it's hard to do that considering all of the situation that the Padres are in, especially in the outfield. And what is important to them, like they mentioned, speed's important to them. You're not going to get any more of it, elsewhere when you have Jorge Mateo there. But he said, Nick asked, he said we need pitching. People want to bring up Max Scherzer, but that's a non-conversation starter, I think, because he's a free agent at the end of the year. Padres rotation, who are you taking out? That's another thing. Like you trade him, right? They're going to want a major league starter. Okay, let's trade him Weathers or something. That means that you're dead set on signing Scherzer next year, I think. And he has a big salary. Is Seidler really willing to do that? When they're not clear and out, above favorites to win the World Series, like the Dodgers, I feel like. Is he willing, to add payroll that much like that when there's no way that they're signing him back because they have Clevenger coming back next year. That's another starter. He's an all-star caliber starter. You got to factor that in. You have Mackenzie Gore. If he can figure out his command and be consistent, he's coming in, number one pitching prospect in the league. There's just it's not a fit. You have Darvish. That's your wild card game pitcher. That's your Jacob deGrom. No one's Jacob deGrom, but if you have a Jacob deGrom, that's Darvish. You have Snell, who we've seen better of as of late. You have Joe Musgrove, who's been absolutely phenomenal beyond a couple starts this year, who I'd be more confident sending out there than Snell this year in a playoff game.
100%.
You have Paddock, who's pitched great since coming off the IL. There's not a fit for Scherzer. There's not a fit for any other starting pitcher unless you're going to send him down unless you're going to send him down in the minor leagues and have him be depth. You're not going to bring in a big starting pitcher because it doesn't make sense. So, we need pitching and a bat, maybe relief help, but the bullpen.
Yeah, I'm thinking that. Yeah,
the bullpen though, like it leads the league in ERA. Mark Melancon, I do have worries if he can continue doing this the entire year because of his age, because his fastball velocity isn't, 98 like Chapman and everyone else. But, they have Ryan Weathers, who went to the bullpen Sunday. So they're abandoning the 6-man rotation as of now. That's another arm in the bullpen. Maybe Gore comes up in the bullpen later this year. You're going to get Drew Pomeranz back soon. I think the bullpen, that's the only place pitching staff-wise where you add a major leaguer, and maybe that's where Preller decides to go. But other than that, I just don't see anywhere that you'd make any significant additions just because of the roster, because of their circumstances next year. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird year, whereas Padre fans, we don't really need a whole lot. Last year we were kind of like, okay, we need pitching. It's kind of obvious. But this year, the pitching's good. Apart from, Blake Snell, who's kind of been, up and down here and there, but, he's going to be here. He's going to be here next year. He's going to be here for a couple years, I believe, on his contract. Then you got Clevenger coming up. So the starting rotation, I think, is pretty much set, set in stone, with the guys we got. I don't know about the order of it, or who will be there, but it's going to be people in our organization already, I believe. The only thing that's kind of a question is that that bullpen. Mark Melancon, not the velocity, not high velocity, higher in age, but he's produced. He's been good. The only question is, or I guess it's kind of a gamble, is if he's going to, continue doing it. And, he did good today. So that's kind of a, confidence booster there, I guess, as a fan. He's doing it against a playoff team. Just that, I don't really see now that we look at it, a really big addition, if any additions, even maybe some depth, maybe some outfield depth, as you said, but nothing in the starting rotation or, infield 100% now.
And like I mentioned, you mentioned Mark Melancon, how he pitched good against a playoff team. I have full confidence in the guy that he can pitch against playoff teams.
Yeah.
He did it against the Dodgers. He's done it all year. I think he leads the league in saves. Now, my only question about him is if he can do it against playoff teams when it matters most in October. Now, do they do a thing like, they did with Paddock? I think, what was it, 2019, where they sent him to the Storm for a couple weeks. Now, that's a different, obviously, thing. I'm not saying you send him down because you can't, because he's, a big, he's been in the league a lot. He's a longtime veteran. But do you send him on the IL and say he has a neck strain, and just, just let him, just give him some rest so he can be ready, back, when they have a soft schedule in the middle of the year, it heats up at the end in September. Man, they have a tough schedule in September, but in the middle of the year, maybe you use the All-Star break and then the first week back from the All-Star break, or the first week before the week before the All-Star break and then the All-Star break to give him prolonged rest. But my only question is durability, if he can continue doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Because if he can't, that's going to be hard to win. Unless Tim Hill continues pitching great. Now he hasn't been great as of late. So that's a big question mark. If Drew Pomeranz comes back healthy and pitches great, there's all these question marks if Melancon doesn't continue pitching great all year and is healthy. So that's the only question I have. The other mailbag question was from Braden Nicklemore on Instagram. Do we have a better chance of getting Gallo or Scherzer? We covered Gallo and Scherzer there. But as for the question, probably Gallo is you have the better chance because the Scherzer contract.
Scherzer's just going to be a free agent.
He's a free agent at the end of the year. There's probably a DH next year, right? So maybe fit him in then. And just the Scherzer, like we mentioned, big contract, free agent at the end of the year, incoming all-star caliber starting pitchers next year for the Padres. It doesn't make much sense to bring in Scherzer. So I'd say Gallo, even though Gallo I don't think really fits very much because
there's just too much depth at starting pitcher, and there's no reason.
As for Gallo, you say that I mentioned that there was going to be a DH next year, and you're like, okay, who's our DH this year? We don't really have one. But at the same time, there's a thing called free agency, and that's so easy to get guys next year, or you could do it via trade in the off season when he's less value because it's less, it's one less season that you have him under control. So you could do it then too, but just as for this season, doesn't make sense for Scherzer or Gallo at all, in my opinion. And you're in that same boat. So and Gallo's salary is $6.2 million compared to Scherzer's $34 million. So that's why I say Gallo. I mean, exactly. It's a huge gap. So, and like we mentioned, neither really fits great, but if you're saying, salary wise, and if you plan on Gallo being the DH beyond this year, when it probably is in effect, then I'd say him. But so that's on Mailbag. Again, you can hit us up on Talking Friars, Instagram, Twitter, comments on YouTube. You can hit either Jacob or me up. You can talkingfriars@gmail.com can do that as well. Just to submit your questions, and we'll get to all of them on the next pod whenever you ask them. One last thing, Rockies series preview. Game 1's on Monday at 5:40. Lamet is on the mound. Game 2, Tuesday at 5:40 our time. Darvish on the mound Wednesday at 12:10. Snell is on the mound for the series finale before they head back to San Diego here for a packed Petco Park, full capacity for the first time since September of 2019. That place is going to be rocking. Right in time for the Dodgers series on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, which Jacob won't be at because he decided to take a trip to Minnesota. But that's on
my
his
fault, guys.
I got you. Anyway,
I wish, man. I'll be cheering on from Minnesota.
I got you. Anyway, Colorado's more than 12 games under 500. They are rebuilding. Trevor Story, they have to trade him. If they don't, I don't know what they're doing, especially considering what totally trash trade they did with Nolan Arenado. But I'm hoping for a sweep, and they have to win the series. There's no doubt about that.
100%. I'm expecting at least a win, but we always hope for that sweep, especially against a team like the Rockies, where they're just in so much trouble for so many more years to come. I just think that we have to win this series. You almost think that a sweep is even, you have to get a sweep. You don't want to lose to a team like the Rockies.
Right.
I know it's at Coors, so that's kind of anything can really happen there. Anyone can hit the ball out, it seems. But hopefully at least a win. I'm thinking a sweep. That's my prediction for this, at least, is a sweep.
And you have Darvish Tuesday. That's a must win. Snell, hopefully he pitches better, but it is in Colorado, so you never know with that. And Lamet, obviously, even if they lose on Monday, which hopefully they don't, you're just obviously like pretty much every start until we see him, going 6-7 innings. You just want him to come out healthy.
Hmm.
One sign I talked about by myself on the last pod, the last series recap pod, Lamet seemed like his last start, he was actually airing it out for the first time. He seemed really comfortable, and so that was a positive sign. So if he can do that again, I think he's fully healthy and he's fully ready to go and feels really, really good. So hopefully, if everything goes well, everything's health-wise, Padres can sweep and feel good going into a packed Petco Park on Thursday. Anything else?
No, let's move on from this series against the Mets. Got this final win, which was huge. Welcome back, Slam Diego, for the or third time this year, I believe. Yeah, 2 from Tatis, 1 from Caratini. But let's just go into this Colorado series, win this series, and then move back home to that full capacity for our faithful. I'm excited for that.
Yep. One last thing before we get going here. I did want to mention the next guest. I said I'd reveal that. The next guest will be Chris Ello of 97.3 The Fan. He's the afternoon drive host with Tony Gwynn Jr., with Matt Scraby as producer. So he'll be talking tomorrow. We'll get that up probably Monday morning before noon. With the video. Ello can only join voice call, so you'll just get my face the entire time, but on the YouTube version. But you can listen to the pod as well, the podcast audio version on Spotify. Apple Podcast takes a while to upload, so Spotify is the best place to go for it. So Chris Ello will talk Padres, what he saw from the Mets, that Mets series this weekend, what he sees from Snell and Paddock, what he's seen from Tommy Pham finally rebounding this year, from Fernando Tatis Jr., front running for the NL MVP, in my opinion. Hopefully that's his opinion as well. That'll be a good conversation. This was episode 23. Make sure you follow all the social channels, subscribe on YouTube. Pre-game thoughts are on there as well, just like Instagram and Twitter. All episodes are going to be on there from now on, video versions. So until then, we'll sign off and say, let's go Padres.
Go Padres. Let's go.